Call Planning and Development Committee meeting. And first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching online this morning. And this morning, the next first item on the agenda then is the declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. Undeclared, then we have two public meetings this morning. The first one is Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 217-17.44. And we will have our planning report first, and then we'll ask for public comments. I believe Leah will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. We have an official plan amendment application in front of the committee this morning, submitted to us by Cuesta Planning Consultants, who are in attendance this morning, together with the owner, Mr. O'Driscoll. Now, the proposal is to permit two vacant residential building lots in an agricultural designation. It doesn't comply with our agricultural policies, and as such, does require an official plan amendment application. So I'll just take a few minutes and talk to you a little bit about sort of overall, the fact that we were unable to find any merit with this application, and hence are bringing forward a recommendation for refusal. Consents that strengthen the agricultural nature of the countryside includes lots for things like farm-related commercial, farm-related industrial, or institutional uses, of course, that are related to agriculture, and dwellings that are surplus to a farming operation. Consents for new residential uses, we do have a concern that they fragment larger holdings, they negatively impact future agricultural uses, and they apply undue pressure on serviced urban areas. And in this case, there's close proximity to the urban settlement area of Port Elgin. Port Elgin is where new residential growth is directed. I don't think that these severances are in the public interest. So Mr. Scott does question the appropriateness of the agricultural area designation in this location. So I'll just take you to, in the appendix, the Canada Lands Inventory Map. This shows us the soils classification, and the red circle shows us the area of this property. So we can see that the soils do fall within a large stretch of what is considered prime agricultural soil, Class 2. So there has been a suggestion that the sort of general application of the prime agricultural areas shouldn't apply. Well, there is sort of not a general application. The application is quite clear in our plan. The site-specific amendment does take exception to the consent density policies. I don't think that that's a suitable way to proceed under the circumstances. The county recognizes that the identification of prime ag areas, of course, is based on the CLI, the Canada Lands Inventory. Now, in cases where the municipality and the county work in collaboration and in cooperation, there is a process and a mechanism that is available to property owners, to the municipality and to the county, to look at the soils type and determine whether it actually is an appropriate designation or not. It's known as a land evaluation and area review, a LEAR study. And that works to determine the appropriateness of the designation. So logically, it would evaluate the merits of the application in conjunction with a comprehensive evaluation. That hasn't been conducted in this case. Even if the lands were in a different designation, for example, a rural designation, perhaps to recognize soils that aren't currently being used for agriculture, we are quite familiar with the fact that strip development isn't appropriate in rural areas either. Added to the fact that we have frontage on a county arterial road, and the policies are in place to protect traveling along that arterial road. So not only isn't it supported by the county plan, either in an agricultural or rural area, but also isn't a really good idea. I'll just take you to the Town of Saugeen Shores comments. We did receive comment back from municipal staff. The comments, of course, have been shared with the owners. Now, the application identifies that it is the owner's intention to service the new vacant residential lots with private water, so essentially drilling new private wells, and not to extend the water main from Highway 21. It is the town's requirement that municipal water, when available, be extended. In this case, private water isn't a suitable alternative because there is municipal water in proximity. So developments in cases like this certainly shouldn't be contemplated because it would trigger a need for an unjustified and, in my opinion, an uneconomical expansion of infrastructure. There should also be some further discussion, at least at an introductory point, with the County Highways Department as to any kind of road works that would potentially take place within the county road right-of-way, which would, of course, be contemplated if municipal water was to be extended. Now, we already have taken a look at the Canada Lands Inventory soils mapping. Granted, the lot currently is undersized with respect to our minimum of generally 40 hectares in agricultural areas. But the size of the existing lot doesn't change its soils classification, so maintaining the existing acreage, or, for example, merging the severed portion, the portion of the lands that the owner is not interested in keeping, with the abutting agricultural operation, for example, could protect its potential for ag purposes. By severing them, we are setting up a situation for unnecessary conflicts that are related to the intrusion of land uses, certainly not compatible with ag operations. I'll mention a point about the zoning on the property. It is currently zoned agriculture. In the past, when there was a former service station on the property, there was a commercial zoning on this lot. Years later, certainly the service station is no longer present. It is being used just as a single-family home, and Council of Saugeen Shore has changed the zoning to agriculture to recognize that being a permitted use on a non-farm lot. I'll just take a moment to mention very recently I was in front of your committee with a similar application in the sense of creating a vacant residential lot very close to where we're looking at today. That was in front of the committee last month, and in fact also submitted by Mr. Scott. Circumstances, although sort of at a high level, may appear the same, looking at creating a vacant residential lot on a county road. When we take a look at not just the policy framework, that was a situation where the lands were already within a special policy area that allowed for that non-farm development. More importantly is the fact that there were non-agricultural uses surrounding that property, sort of just west of, just east of here. So the context, the surrounding land uses were quite different to the uses that are around this property, which not only include some non-farm residential, but also agricultural, and some institutional uses, like, for example, the church and passive recreation, the golf course, uses that aren't strictly considered to be urban uses. Those are uses that we find throughout the countryside. So I am recommending that the committee consider recommending refusal of the application to allow for further strip development and the potential for increased conflict in our countryside. Mr. Chair, I'll leave it at that and certainly be available if there are any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Leah. Committee, any questions of Leah? Okay, if not, then, okay, Anne, please go ahead.
So I read this, if I got this on right, I read this on the weekend, and I'm just trying to get the picture. And so you would be okay with that little bit of land going on the ag land, joining it, but not to have another house beside the old school. So if the people there wanted those two lots, you'd prefer them to go to the south. Have you got the right picture in that?
Right, so no question about there not being any kind of service station use on there. It is simply being used as a home, residential use. By merging those surplus lands with a farm, we're certainly setting up the potential to use the Class 2 soils to their highest and best use, which would be much more reasonable to merge it in and achieve some of the objectives that we're trying to in the countryside for agricultural areas.
So that little piece of land, is it farmed now, or is it just left to grass?
It's not being farmed currently.
Under all.
Okay, so it's just a vacant lot. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Buckle.
The residential lot kitty corner to this parcel we're talking about and the golf course, either one of them on town water? Like they have their own well, do they?
My understanding is they do have their own water. Yep, an existing use that was drilled many years ago.
And sewers, that is quite a ways away from this area.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Leah?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ann.
So if you brought water and sewer, then everybody else would have to, in that corner, would have to go on water and sewer as well. That would be imposed. Like, if you're bringing water and sewer out, you're not just going to bring it out for those 2 lots, right?
I think the comments just spoke to water. The water is fairly close there, but that would be something that the municipality would decide, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a separate issue from
Oh, so the sewer's not close?
sewer is not close, and it's not likely to be there for a while.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to be asking these questions.
That's
I'm trying
fine.
to get-
That's good.
And Mr. Chair, sorry, if you'll indulge me just as a follow-up to the comment. So from the municipality's position, we do sort of take that and understand that it wouldn't be in the best interests of the municipality or in the public's interest to extend water out into the countryside. So again, another reason just not to support creation of new lots out there.
Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, it's quite evident that the property is not being farmed at all and probably hasn't been for a long time. So I'm wondering, I don't really have any objection to allowing this application. It's in an area that has residential properties, so that at this point is my opinion.
Thanks, Dave. If there's, you want to speak? Councillor Eagleson?
Yeah, this, just a couple of things. I'm quite familiar with that property. It hasn't been farmed or agricultural for many years. As far as I'm concerned, Mother Nature has planted some cedar trees there. He got, it's almost 60% wooded with some 20-year-old cedar trees. It backs onto the agricultural field behind it. And as far as creating 2 residential lots there, you got 2 houses to the east of it, a house to the west of it, a house across the road, and entering onto the county road. You've already got 5 entrances onto the county road right there, and to be coming to those houses, it's time you're greatly slowing down because of the intersection or turning the bend to come on to Highway 21. So as far as I'm concerned, I see, unfortunately, because of this land use mapping, it's agricultural land, and that's putting up a bit of a flag to not, for the county not to approve this. But to me, that this land is crying out for 2 homes. This is infilling. This is infilling at its finest. And town water is close by, but I agree with the chairman, town water or well water, that's a separate issue from today. So I fully support creating 2 lots there. There's no question in my mind about that.
Thanks. I think maybe we'll have some comments. If there's no questions, we'll have some comments from the public if there's anybody who would like to speak.
Absolutely. Mr.
Sure.
Scott is prepared with the presentation. Mr. Chair, if I could just add a comment for follow-up.
Sure.
From Councillor Eagleson's comments, I will share with you a conversation that I had recently with our county engineer, who really is not interested in further exacerbating a not ideal situation. So granted, there are, as you correctly point out, existing entrances onto the county road. Creating even more and hindering the access even more is not something that the engineer is excited about. So I shall take my seat, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone from the public would like to speak? Just, I'm sure we all know, but just give us your name and your, for the record.
Thank you. My name's Don Scott, Cuesta Planning Consultants. Mr. O'Driscoll is here. If there are any questions you want to ask him. Leah said that this is only going to be 15 minutes, and I couldn't speak very long, so she sure that I didn't have very much time left. So I just want to touch on a few things. I think Leah's argument, is one that I'm not, that I'm quite familiar with. I noticed in her staff report, and she did say very clearly that new residential uses fragment larger agricultural holdings, negatively impact future agricultural uses, and apply pressure on serviced urban settlement areas where residential growth is to be directed, and these are not in the public interest. Just for a bit of explanation on that, this is a 2.5 acre parcel. It's not going to fragment any agricultural lands. It does abut some lands that are used for agriculture. It's bordered on the north by the county road. There's a golf course with a house on it on the other side of the road. It's bordered on the west by Carlisle, which I should note has municipal water. Mr. O'Driscoll has paid $3,500 for the privilege of having that run by his front door. So I don't really feel that this is going to have any impact on the agricultural activity that's happening right now. The agricultural activity, to be quite honest, is limited before we even started with regard to more intensive use other than cash cropping because of the existing development around that area. As mentioned, Leah mentioned, there are 2 residential homes to the east. There's a golf course to the north with a home on it. There's a church and play field to the south. To the west, there is a house. It doesn't show up on that schedule, but there's a house on the property to the west of Carlisle. There's also, I thought it was a residence kitty corner from the northwest of the intersection. It's actually, I think, a duplex or triplex. So it's quite evident that this is as has been mentioned, an infill scenario. I do agree with Leah that when it comes to the public interest, residential severances in an agricultural area can have a negative effect. That's not a problem. But that does not apply in this particular situation. I don't see any particular conflict with the public interest at all. I'm going to sort of skip. I had a very long presentation, but you know what planners are like. They just never want to stop talking. So I'm going to just highlight a few things about the O'Driscoll property. And as Leah mentioned, when Mr. O'Driscoll bought this property back in '89, that was before municipal restructuring. They did have a commercial zoning on it, on the the western 1 acre part of it. The rest of the land, when the three zoning bylaws merged, that zoning magically disappeared. So he then converted the existing buildings into a sort of a seasonal recreational accommodation. And as has been mentioned, the balance of the lands to the east of these residents there's a lot of cedar trees on it. It's definitely hasn't been farmed for at least 50 years. So I'm not too certain whether the farmer next door would want about 1.5 acres of cedar trees. It would take him several decades to clear it and make any money on it if he ever did. Just a few, I agree that there's no question that this is a Class 2 lands, and this is one of the, it's also has a subclassification of stoniness, which you can understand because Miller Paving has a fairly gargantuan gravel pit to the east of this. I've looked at the PPS as well as the county plan. I don't want to spend too much time on that. The county plan, the principal purpose of that is, of their consent policies, is to prevent the fragmentation of agricultural parcels, and that then facilitates a wider range of agricultural uses in agricultural areas. This original lot, this original township lot has already been subdivided into 11 parcels, so the purity of the agricultural designation is definitely suspect. And as I mentioned before, there hasn't been any agricultural activities for at least half a century on this. So I don't feel that there's any conflict with the intent and purpose of either the county official plan or the provincial policy statement. Agricultural lands are more than the CLI land category, so that's something that must be taken into consideration. Just to summarize quickly, this is an infill application. It represents an efficient form of development for this property and this area of the municipality. The municipality, by the way, does not seem to have an issue with this particular proposal. There would, if it is approved, they will require an agreement with Mr. O'Driscoll to extend the water line that presently is on Carlisle to service the lots. It is compatible with the surrounding area and will complement the rural environment in this area. It will not create a negative impact on any agricultural operation in the area. The property is too small to be a viable agricultural operation. As I mentioned, it is presently bush covered, and to merge it with the adjacent farm field is not a viable suggestion. This is an area of CLI Class 1, but the whole area is CLI Class 1. And this is designated agriculture on the official plan, but the golf course, which is definitely Class 2 CLI, has another designation on it. So there is a bit of arbitrariness in drawing those lines. I appreciate the concern of staff with preserving agricultural areas. However, agricultural areas involve more than defining an area according to the CLI ratings. It involves the size of the area, surrounding land uses, and assurances that any application will not jeopardize existing agricultural operations. I feel there is not a conflict with the policy that affects this property, and I would respectfully request that the application be approved. And I'll take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak to this issue? If not, I just to make a comment, I think, you know, this to me is, we talk about the Bruce Lynn, and this is a perfect example where we could develop a land. This is not agricultural land. It's not likely to ever be agricultural land again. It hasn't been farmed in over 50 years, and to me, this is a good example where we could say the agricultural policies really don't fit in this particular piece, and I think there's other areas we could agree. So I have no trouble with the severances. I think it's a good use of that land, much better than it is now. So, Council, go ahead, Ann.
Well, I know we've farmed, and I wouldn't be too excited about a property full of cedars and hasn't been farmed for, and it's only 2 acres to, but I was wondering, on the other side of the house that's currently there, is that bush? I just was, and does that, is that part of the farm? Does the farm go, that 28 acres go to the road, or is it just behind the bush there, or what appears to be bush to me?
Houses to this, to where you're looking there. There's 2 houses to the east or southeast there.
Okay.
Beyond this property, and then there's the bush. But that bush, so it's the end of those 2 properties will be the beginning of that agricultural land, which is, as it's shown there, mostly covered in dense cedars.
And then for MDS reasons, you can't really go into any other type of agriculture. So I agree with you know, what you're saying. I think I would approve it as the 2 lots. I think that's better for that whole situation. And I don't think any farmer would be, it's not worth it for 2 acres.
Okay, so I guess what we need to do is deal with the recommendation first. So the recommendation is that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 217-17.44 be refused. A mover and a moved by Mitch, a seconder for that. Milt, any discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? That fails. So then I guess we need a motion to approve, and it's moved by Mitch that Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 217-17.44 be approved, and seconded by Milt. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is again an official plan amendment. It's Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 221-17.26. It's attached, and I believe Valia again is going to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, we have another official plan amendment, this time in the municipality of Kincardine. And the intention behind this official plan amendment is to facilitate a surplus farm dwelling severance. Fairly straightforward. The application meets all of the consent policies in the ag designation except for one. With respect to being a bona fide farmer, only a portion of the farm in question that we're looking at on the screen at the moment is actually subject to the agroforestry policies by the owner. Agroforestry, of course, being a permitted agricultural use. However, the entire farm is not currently being used for that purpose. The official plan does require that that be the case. All of the other bona fide farmer criteria and eligibility provisions are satisfied with respect to this application. So the balance of the farm is currently being rented to a farmer. It is in field crop. The support and approval of this official plan amendment, of which I am recommending, does uphold the spirit and the intention of the official plan. So we did not have any concerns or objections from any of the commenting agencies or from the public. And Mr. Chair, I will leave it there.
Thank you. Any questions for Leah? Thank you, Leah. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this application? None? Okay, then I have the recommendation is that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 221-17.26 be approved. Mover and a seconder, moved by Ann, seconded by Mitch. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda, we have a delegation this morning. It's Gemma Mendez-Smith. She's from the 4-County Labor Board. So welcome, Gemma.
Thank you and good morning. I just wanted to thank you for the invitation to bring the results of the Employer 1 survey to you. We had a very, very good response from the Employer 1 in Bruce County this year. Last year we had 80. This year we bumped that up to 121 businesses responding, which represents 17% of all responses across our 4-county region and 6% of businesses in Bruce County. And that we excluded the businesses that had 0 employees because these questions are really based around workforce development, so they wouldn't really have input unless they're planning on growing. So that's kind of where we're at. We're at 6% of the businesses that are eligible to respond to the survey in Bruce County responding. And that's definitely a huge increase from the year before. And what we saw for this slide number 2 is Bruce County had both more temporary, which is seasonal, and contracted workers, 18% compared to 12% across the rest of the counties, the other 3 counties. So you're dense in more temporary type employment, which speaks to that whole tourism economy that does exist here in Bruce County. And there are more full-time positions compared to the rest of the counties, which is at 76% for Bruce and 69% across the rest of the 4-county average. So we're seeing more full-time, but definitely in seasonal uncontracted work. So when we talk about some of those challenges around finding qualified workers, which often comes up in this survey, is the fact that when we find that there's more temporary contracted type of work, then people are a little bit less engaged in the workforce because that continuous employment, precarious employment, seems to stand out. So that's something that we need to be paying attention to. Bruce County had fewer employees under 25 at 8% compared to 16% overall, and fewer employees over 55, 14% compared to 22% overall. So we see that Bruce County has a much younger and more people in the workforce that are going to be here for a little bit longer, still considering that seasonal and contracted work compared to the average across the 4-county region. And if we can go to the next slide, 69% of Bruce County employers rate the availability of qualified workers as fair to poor. And this is almost exactly the same as the rest of the 4-county region, which is the average is around 68%. And this is where we have that talk about what is it that we need to be doing to prepare our workforce. And one of the things that we can do to make sure that we're making a good match is that the expectations of the workforce for the type of work that's available in Bruce County is clearly articulated in any marketing that we're doing. So when people are looking for work, they know what they're getting into, and so they're prepared to do that kind of work and the seasonality of it and being on contract. So there's a lot of education around the types of jobs that are available in Bruce County, and of course to the workforce as to how they prepare for those jobs, because we also asked employers about what are the skills that they're looking for and what are the reasons why they find that this is so high to have fair to poor availability of skilled workers. And so here's something that we wanted to highlight is the hiring trends. And we didn't do this in the last report, but we felt that this was really interesting information for our community and for you as the people around planning business and economic development and training for what we might be doing in Bruce County. This is really important. So the hiring trends for Bruce County is in 2016, Bruce County employers hired significantly fewer full-time positions, 23%. Compared to 51% across the 4-county region. And significantly more seasonal positions, which we talked about before, 53% compared to 25% for the 4-county average. And some of the things that we noticed as well is when we talk about those retention, the retention was really around layoffs in Bruce County, and when we compare that to the rest of the other 3 counties, there were more quits, and that also speaks to the seasonality of the workforce in Bruce County. The other counties, we saw more people quitting, whereas Bruce County, we saw more of those layoff type positions. And sometimes those layoff positions do count on the recalls when the season is back in business. So, you know, there's a difference actually when we compare the other 3 counties to Bruce County. There is a difference in how the hiring trends and the retention trends are working in Bruce County. So that's something we need to look at, and how do we support what's already happening for our businesses here in Bruce County. 38% for the next slide, 38% of Bruce County employers had hard-to-fill positions, and in 2016, which is less than the 4-county average, which was across the 4-county region was 47%. So you had less hard-to-fill positions, but 25% of employers spent over a year trying to fill some of those hard-to-fill positions. And that was a question we added to this year's survey, because we felt that just asking employers if they had hard-to-fill positions, that was okay. But finding out how difficult and how prolonged that problem seemed to have been, we wanted to find out more. So this is where we added that question, and we found that 25% had those hard-to-fill positions that kept going on and on. And so it's really working with those employers to find out what types of positions, and are they the highly skilled, are they the more entry-level positions, and how do we prepare people locally, or build an attraction strategy that will help employers fill those particular positions. The top reasons why positions were hard to fill was a lack of applicants. The number one, not enough applicants, so we don't have enough people applying. Second is soft skills, which the next two are soft skills. Motivation, particularly attitude and interpersonal abilities. So sometimes what we've heard from employers is that they will hire, and within even the orientation period, people don't show up. They may leave at lunchtime on the third day and they don't come back for the rest of the orientation. Or they may do that as part of their, I've been here 6 months, I'm out of here. And there's no way of collecting data then. Why did you leave? What are the issues that caused you to make that decision? When somebody walks out, you don't have an opportunity for an exit interview. So that's difficult. And so what we're trying to work on and hope to be able to gather in the next little while is to hear from the workforce. What prompts you to just to abandon a job? What is that motivating on that makes you make that decision to just leave and not show up again? And I think we need to understand that. Are there things that we need to be maybe helping mentoring employers in? Maybe it's a supervisory mentorship that helps people be better supervisors, or is it on the other end of helping the workforce develop a better attitude about the work that they're doing? And so we need to figure out where that gap exists and how can we mitigate some of those challenges. And the top 3 competencies needed in those hard to fill positions are really around, most of that are around those soft skills. Work ethic, showing up, the dedication and dependability. And then of course the being self-motivated and the ability to do your job once you've been trained with little or no supervision. So being able to go out there and get the job done once you've been trained properly to do that. And then the third could be considered a hard skill, customer service. There are training opportunities for that, and customer service seems to be one of those core competencies. And it speaks directly to the types of positions that might be available in Bruce County around tourism and the service sector. The top recruitment methods, which is the next slide, for employers in Bruce County, and this is across the board actually, it's word of mouth. And we tend to, in a community, and actually this is, I would say my colleagues across the Western region will say that this is exactly the same for all of, whether it's an urban center or a rural community, it's word of mouth. And I think it's because we trust that someone's going to recommend a person who will fit into the culture of our organization. They wouldn't recommend someone who just wouldn't work out. So we find that employers tend to rely more on that word of mouth, and they're having better success. However, when we deal with the first challenge of hard to fill positions, not having enough applicants, that could be what is promoting the fact that you're not having enough applicants. Interestingly enough, we're hiring for some positions for a project we have. We've extended our reach to all of our employment services, and I put the job up on Indeed, and I've gotten more applications through Indeed than the word of mouth or the local services. So just that as a test and an example of if you're looking and you're not getting enough applicants, you need to broaden that search, and getting that message out to our employers will be a vital service to them to know how they can meet those needs in the future. The next slide speaks to their ability, employers' ability to support training, and 68% of the responding employers supported ongoing training, and 32% could not, and they cited the relevance of training not being offered locally, the cost, and the loss of productivity during that training time. So figuring out ways where we could have training, maybe more locally, and offered at different times, flexible schedules where people can get that and still be able. I know one of the trends that's happening now, people want to continue working, and they will do training to upgrade their skills on their off time or in the evenings or when they're not at work. So certainly being able to support our workforce in developing skills in different ways will help us be a more I guess moving towards more of that intelligent type community that allows learning to happen at any time. So those are just some of the highlights of the survey that we were able to distribute this year. And I do want to give a special thank you to Manpreet and all efforts to get these responses this year for Bruce County. Like I said, we had 80 responses last year. We're up to 121. There was a lot of hard work that went into marketing and really pushing that out in January for the whole month of January. And Manpreet was the emails are on the phone with us. Where are we now? What else do we need to be doing? So it's no wonder that we got those responses that we did, and I want to thank the county for signing the memorandum of understanding with us to be able to do that work and get the valuable information that you need and we need to plan for a very strong and productive and viable workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Questions?
Gemma, was the topic of transportation brought up?
It's not asked as a question to employers, but we know for a fact that that is a challenge for us. How we know that is when we talk to our service providers and we see our participation numbers falling. We did look at our participation numbers for last month in the employment numbers, and it did decline. And we know that some of those factors are the transportation, the fact that people can't get to the jobs. Childcare is a huge issue as well. If you can't have childcare, you can't go to work. So those are some of the issues that people are finding that keeps them from the labor market.
Ann, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Gemma. She always has good information for us, and she's been helping us with our local economic development committee in the municipality of Kincardine. We really appreciate it. It's great when we all work together.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of excellent information here, but what is the path forward? But one thing I find on your report that I was wondering if you're prepared to comment on the top hard to fill jobs you had as sales, which I find that a bit odd because it's almost everyone's dream to be a salesman of some sort. It really doesn't take a whole lot of physical energy to be a good salesman. But otherwise, a cook, yeah, and then a laborer. What else would be on that list? Like, I know laborer pretty much covers everything.
It does, and I think a lot of what we're seeing is those entry-level positions are the hardest ones to fill when we speak to our employers. In tourism, in the tourism economy, we're finding a lot of those service-type industries and the customer service piece. You know, it's interesting. We all it's ourselves in a job or something, but a lot of people, when you put the title of salesperson in that job description, people tend to shy away from it. And I think that people need to just know that what does that mean? And I think what we need to be doing is having a better description of what we're expecting people to do in those job descriptions. And I know when I'm advertising, I always think, does this make sense what I'm asking? Would someone understand? And so, you know, talking about sales positions, but what is it exactly that we're expecting someone to do will be a value as we start to describe those jobs and job descriptions.
Gemma, I got a question and then maybe just a comment. I'm interested to see how we compare, or if you could compare. Like, I look at that number where, say, only 31% think their employers think the availability of skilled workers is good. It is, like, to me, that's a troubling number, I think, for people who wants to open a business and say, geez, it's pretty hard to find people in this area.
It is. And it also speaks to the fact that we're pretty close to full employment. So the people that we have that are looking for work have multiple barriers that keep them away from the labor market. So now that we're almost at full employment and employers are still looking for people, business is still growing, they're finding it harder and harder to find those skills. And so what we need to be looking at is not that we don't have the people here, but how can we get people here? We've got a lot of young people that are exiting the school system and they're not sure what they want to do. How do we ensure that we're marketing what's happening in Bruce County so they make decisions about either staying here and working or getting trained and coming back to fill those positions?
And I guess that leads to my next comment is, for counties, there's a number of campuses for community colleges. They're present in many communities. Is there a lack of Is there a disconnect there where the community college aren't really recognizing the skill sets that are needed in the workforce, or is it too broad for that?
No, I think positive move forward is that the community college are actually starting to look at what skills employers need. We work very closely with the community colleges. They use our information all the time, and that is because they're recognizing we can't just have blanket programs and just deliver those programs. We really need to think about how we can be flexible and fill the needs of employers. So it's been our message over the last, I would say, 10 years about being more flexible in the education system, particularly post-secondary, and so we're working more closely with them now, and they're using these data to say, okay, employers in Bruce County need this particular skill, and we see that happening over at the Lake Huron Learning Center, where we're seeing more, maybe project management type training, PSW, personal support worker training, and those are needs that have been identified in the local community. We're working right now to think about how we can have more apprenticeship opportunities and those hands-on training pieces that will be offered locally for things that are needed and identified for our workforce.
Thank you, Gemma. Any further questions? Well, thank you for the presentation and the work you do for us.
Thank you.
I don't know which button to push, but I don't know if I should push any.
It's nice activating something. Well, it is because you get something to it.
It was like that to start with. I think it's for,
I think you maybe did.
that's
Yep.
Did you want to?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. My only concern for the benefit of the room is we have a bit of a scheduling challenge with HR. So if there's any way that we could get through the agenda no later than 11:15, otherwise we'll have to request that we have a recess. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, and then go into HR.
We could do that, but I think we'll move on then. The next item then is it's an action item. It's the Walkerton Community Official Plan 5-year review, and I believe David Smith will make the presentation.
Good morning. I won't be any more than about an hour. Right? Does that sound about right? Good morning. The application before you is for the county approval of a amendment number 14 to the Walkerton Community Official Plan, which constitutes their 5-year review. We've been lucky in the sense that the faith that the municipality of Brockton and a lot of our other partners have shown us in hiring the county, mind you, sometimes for a very good price, but also putting up with the timelines and things like that that get stretched out in order to do the work. So we've appreciated both the confidence of the municipality and their timeline that they were able to extend to us, which was longer than the original one that was proposed. And that worked for us and hopefully work for the municipality still too. And we also extend to South Bruce also the appreciation for their confidence in engaging the county and their patience too with timelines that are going forward. Now, in relationship to the amendment in front of you, the 5-year review is only for a local official plan. It is only for the settlement area of Walkerton. That is the only official plan that the municipality has. We've worked with the municipality on a number of open houses, a number of work with staff and with a steering committee of both council and municipal staff in preparing the amendment. As you can see from the process, we had a special meeting. We had a number of open houses with the public, well attended by council, which was very encouraging in the sense of the concept of owning the plan and making sure that they're seeing what's in the plan, what the council has of concern. There was a public meeting Monday, April 10th, and then Council of Brockton made their decision on April 24th and directed their staff to forward the amendment to County Council and this committee for final approval. The text and the policies that were adopted had been circulated to a number of agencies for their comment, and in particular, we received comments back that I'm just going to highlight in regards to policies or comments from the Conservation Authority, Saugeen Valley, in this particular case, and in relationship to flood fringe policies. Of all the things that came forward out of the plan, this is really the only sticking issue, I guess you could say, that came out of agency comments and circulation and from the public, so it bears a minute or so of discussion or letting you know what's going on here. The plan is put forward by the Planning Department to Council and adopted by Council, deals with flood fringe policies. As you know, a majority portion of downtown Walkerton, commercial and residential, is covered by floodplain issues because of the Saugeen River. And the province's approach to flood fringe policies is that the dike that does protect downtown Walkerton does not exist in terms of how we move forward with planning for those areas. They have a very singular approach in the sense that things such as hazardous waste should not be stored or manufactured or disposed of or dealt with within a flood fringe area. And the wording in the provincial documents can be very straightforward in that regard. It makes major sense in many respects not to establish a manufacturing or disposal or store a lot of hazardous waste in an area that does have a potential for flooding. The dike in Walkerton is not big enough to deal with the design storm flood. It will over top of it if it comes about. And as we know from the last month or so of hearing about other communities, both across Ontario, Quebec, and into the West, is that flooding issues in some places that haven't been around for hundreds of years are a possibility. When we took a look at the policy and the request from the Conservation Authority, we did feel there was some area to move on that, which is why the policy put forward and adopted by Brockton we feel is an adequate way of moving forward with the issue. However, the Conservation Authority is of the mind at the moment that it does not conform to provincial policy. So that is one singular issue that I thought I'd raise here because it is the one last outstanding issue. However, this council is the approval authority for all amendments to lower tier official plans. Any amendment adopted by Brockton Council is subject to the review and the approval of this committee. And County Council has the following options regarding to the amendment that's in front of you. You can approve the amendment as adopted by Brockton, or you can approve the amendment with modifications, or you can refuse to approve all or part of the adopted amendment. Overall, we find that the amendment is proposed and supported by the county Planning Department, meets the requirements of the provincial policy statement as we've looked at it, conforms to the County of Bruce official plan, and in that regard we will recommend that you approve the amendment as put forward.
Thank you, David. Comments? Go ahead, Dave.
Just a quick comment that this review was very thorough, and we had good community input, as David said, and The county staff worked well with Brockton on this. We did make some minor changes, historic Walkerton included as one, but only minor changes in that area as well. So we're quite pleased with the outcome, and as far as I'm concerned, we can move forward with the adoption.
Thanks. Any further comments? Then there is a staff recommendation to approve the amendment. The mover, moved by Ann, seconded by David. Any further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. So the next item is an action item on Ontario's rural education strategy, and Chris is
sometimes the province listens, apparently, to what's going on in the countryside, and they're doing a total review of policies as they relate to education and the importance of education as a function and how that fits in with the broader community picture. They sent out a document asking a number of questions in terms of how we feel about the review, and simply a recommendation back that the Bruce County support the following objectives that would lead the change. And first of all, the support of sustainable use of school space through the creation of community hubs, support for the concept of shared joint use in schools, support for the changes to the decision-making process around school closures, and support for a better funding formula for rural areas.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments to it? Ann?
I totally support the recommendation. I've been dreaming for years of this concept of shared joint use school space from my former career, and I would just love if we could, I was talking to the Premier just in the hallway at Roma about to create a school facility shared by more than one school board, also known as a joint use school, and not just like the community hub idea, can result in a school staying in a community and with a larger total enrollment being able to offer better facilities, programming, and other opportunities. I would really like to highlight that in our recommendation because I saw it in my career, and I see it today in local areas where, with the declining rural enrollment in a lot of schools, they could share facilities, and we've say lost music programs or lost libraries and gym programs. To me, those are programs that could easily be shared, and by the we have the 4 school board system, but in our area it's mainly 2. And I think in the rural areas it's time we moved for the betterment of the children and the programming. I know even in our area there's some programs missing, and I think for better programming and other opportunities, I think it's very important that we highlight this as well for our rural area. It might take another few years, but I think we have to really start emphasizing that. And I know we can all think of a town where, there's 2 boards side by side, have schools fairly close together, and it would be very easy if new facilities are needed or existing facilities can be used better for programs, and they could share facilities. So I would just like to see it, if in our recommendation we could just elaborate a bit on that. I don't know whether that's possible. Chris?
So support, point number 2 could read support for the concept of shared joint use school space, including the use by more than one board.
Yes, yes, I think that's very important to highlight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any for Mitch?
A couple things. Obviously, we have a large Mennonite community in our area, and so obviously the Lucknow school isn't being used like it used to be. But we also have another problem: is if parents don't like what's going on at a particular school, and this is happening in Lucknow right now. They're going over to the Huron board and taking their children to Brookside School. So we're losing a lot of spaces, a lot of children, just because of what's going on at the Lucknow school. And so I think that part of has to come into the equation as well, that maybe you can't leave a certain jurisdiction that you live in. Should be part of this too, because it can cause a school to close as well.
Go ahead, Ann.
I support Mitch on that. From Lucknow, if they lose their school, it's very, very hard. It's like Paisley. It will be very, very hard on the Lucknow community, and I don't know what to do about that. I guess it's choice, but I think that should be taken into consideration as well, the viability, if students are leaving to go anywhere, the viability of the school. But if the programs aren't there, it's hard to justify it. But if it's not a case of programs.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but I think that the issue should be then we should be demanding of the board that they provide those services. I think freedom of choice is always a great thing where you want to go, because it'll ultimately take you to the best spot. And, you know, I don't know how you incorporate that in there. I think it's an issue really, you know, the board should be providing the services that that people want to come from Huron County into Bruce County instead of the other way around. We have the issue with our board, and I absolutely agree with you, Mitch. I don't know how you include it in the recommendation here, but whatever. Yeah. So is any, go ahead.
Sorry,
Kylie?
through you, Mr. Chair, one recommendation to address that point is under point 4, that following the word of and resources, support the funding formula model that resources rural schools, including appropriate programming, so that the funding formula addresses the programmatic offerings at the schools.
So we have a couple amendments to it. Ann, go ahead.
To be fair to the school board, the funding formula, I think, is the key. They're under it, you know, the gun from the province as far as the funding formula goes. So I think that's a very good amendment to that, Kelly.
Okay, everybody understand the recommendation then? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a second. Moved by Milt, seconded by Ann. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda then are some information items. The first is the Best of Bruce Guide, and Chris is going to present.
Yep, just a very quick rundown. You've seen the report, so just congratulations to council and staff and the people of the county for persevering as we developed the new brand and totally rebranded our consumer face. And as a result of that, we've been at it, I guess, for a year and a half, or coming up in 2 years, and we're already into the hardware. So again, looks good for the county, creates exposure for our program, and again, one of the best of in the platinum category.
Well, congratulations. This has been a lot of work. I know it has been the last couple of years. Any questions for Chris? If not, then the next action item or information item is Bruce County Employer 1 survey, and Kara's got some.
We can take a pass.
Pass that?
Yeah, only because it's just the news release
Okay,
in relation to the previous report.
So there's no. So this is information. Like another one, there's Ontario Municipal Board file number. There's a decision there. If anybody has any questions on that, go ahead. Yep.
With regards to the Ontario Municipal Board, Chris, and of course, it's not law yet, the proposed changes that they're coming forward with, but perhaps will be, I guess.
Yeah, so at the next meeting, we'll bring forward a bit of a brief summary. There's not much there to tell other than they went for the review started in October. And now they're coming out with talking about eliminating the Ontario Municipal Board and having local appeal tribunals. Some of the major components is moving away from advocacy and litigation aspects of the board towards facilitation and mediation, setting up more formal intake processes in terms of at the staff level to bring people into the process and to tell them what the expectations are. So that's, I think, just some pretty positive changes. I think people are, you know, government tends to, in a lot of cases, sort of fix and modify that board legislation. So I think in the planning profession, we were surprised, I think pleasantly so, that the whole thing has been turned on its head. And looking forward to working with them as we go through the new system.
Yeah, I'll wait for your report, but in summary, you're kind of pleased with the...
Yeah, I think...
and I'm looking at the time because, yes.
Nobody was happy. The developers weren't happy, municipalities weren't happy, the public wasn't happy. This process seems to be aimed at facilitation on a limited range of appeals. So from that perspective, I think it's going to save people a lot of time and money.
Okay, then we have one other item. It's Regional Economic Development Working Group update, and it is Kara. Go. Sure.
Manpreet.
Karen, sorry.
Sorry, I said Kara.
I can't read.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So when we adopted our Find Yourself in Bruce County Economic Development Strategic Plan in November last year, we said we wanted to work collaboratively in 3 major areas, and these are communication, projects, and education. So through our regional working group, that's what we are looking to move forward. So as we all know, the county has adopted a macro approach where the county is playing a leadership role, and the role of the municipalities is to foster a culture where we create a business investment friendly environment, and then the role of the local leaders is to nurture that culture and help the potential entrepreneurs entering into their communities. So for this regional working group, so we are working with all the municipalities in Bruce County. So there are 2 members from each municipality that are part of this regional working group. One is a municipal staff member, which brings representation from the municipality itself, and the other person is a local champion, which will bring to the table the role of the local leadership in that particular community. So the goal of the group is to move forward the 4 critical areas, as I mentioned earlier, and these are collaboration, communication, regional projects, and education. The reason why we wrote this report was to update the council about our first meeting of the regional working group. We held this meeting on April 12th at the Southampton Museum and Culture Center. So we talked about 4 of these areas, the priorities of these areas. So the entire group was divided into subgroups, and we prioritized our challenges and opportunities. So the priorities identified in our meetings were, under communication, we identified 2 priorities, and these are, the group wanted to create an electronic forum for the entire group where we can communicate effectively, and then broader economic development communication improvements. So Bruce County staff is working on the communication piece to move these pieces forward. In terms of collaboration, the group identified collaborating on the Bruce branded products and joint marketing and initiatives in order to have a coordinated branded area throughout the county. In terms of education, we wanted to broaden the economic development educational opportunities, and the 3 major projects that were identified as priorities were workforce development, business retention and expansion, and resident attraction. So the group will focus on these priority areas that the group brainstormed, and will develop an action plan and work plan to move these priority areas forward. So each subgroup has been assigned to each of these priority areas, and right now we are working on creating an action plan, and then we'll work together with the group to move those action plan items forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
No. Can you just define for me briefly workforce development? Like what?
Okay. Well, it's a big term, but let's just try to break it down.
Yeah.
So when we talked about at the group level for workforce development, it is right now, whatever the current workforce we have, in order for the employers to match according to the skills they have in terms of the training, so to develop what we currently have, but also from the business owners and local leaders' perspective, it was to attract the workforce into the area. So there are certain jobs that are hard to fill. So for instance, we have one of the rep on our group who is trying to set up another location or trying to expand his business, but it's so hard for him to find employees. So that's an obstacle that's preventing him in setting up a third location for his business or expanding his business. So the group really wants to work on attracting workforce and developing what we currently have in the area.
Because they don't want to come to the region? I mean, there's skilled people there, I would assume.
Yes, but there is a lot of turnover, so they leave for another employment. So if a particular, for example, this is a service industry business and they're not paying as much as other jobs are paying, so there's a lot of turnover. But obviously there are certain jobs that are hard to fill, and that's, again, we have to attract residents to the area. So it's both sides. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we did that with very good timing. So there's nothing else on the agenda. Our next meeting will be June 15th, 2017, and we need a motion to adjourn. Robert and Ann, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.